The beginning of summer 2020 is coming, and it's also the end of the lockdown. It's the perfect moment to just go out. We, with my best friend Ipo, decide to go in street workout park, work on our muscle ups, and even on my part, try this 360 that I couldn't just try a year ago due to a lack of strength. Purely, I wasn't able to just grab the bar and kick in order to create momentum to work on the rotation. This year, I felt like it was my time. And so I remember of this kind of session in which I would arrive in the park, launch my stuff on the ground, go for pull-ups, maybe an attempt of muscle up in order to prove to other guys that I was the guy. And then I would try my 360, and I miserably failed a lot of time. And by the end of 10 attempts, my hands were already cutted. I maybe had done 6 sessions during this summer because I quickly just abandoned. I have to admit, it was pretty tough, and the park was freaking far away. But I had one little small victory. One day, I remember I was alone this time. Ipo wasn't here. I had bought a Red Bull. It was maybe one of the hottest day of the month. I was sweating all around. I even maybe didn't had a bottle of water. I decided to go anyway in the street workout park. It was the day to work on 360. And I've done my 6 attempts that would just destroy my hands. And I was like, okay, just hold on and try again. So I go toward the bar, I grab it, I do the kick, and the previous 6 attempts would have kind of helped me to be wired on this kick in order to have the momentum extra. I had the momentum, and when I'm at the right point, I kind of left the bar, I rotate, and I can touch it. This was my little victory of this summer when it comes to freestyle. After this, maybe I had done a session after this because I had strong hope of progressing even more. I kind of stopped. As mentioned, it's far away, it's freaking hard, and there was no one to really motivate me. I had my best friend with who I was working out with, but he was honest with himself. He didn't like pretty much freestyle, so he didn't work on it. But it's not the end of the world. I have something else. I have so much to explore. During this summer, I could go out so much with Hippo, just hanging around everywhere in Paris because we are in the Paris region. We would go look for so certain park, places to just practice street workouts. And yet, life was just fun and enjoyable. We even had the chance to go to vacations together. He could invite me at his grandparents' house in Normandy, like close to the beach. It was freaking incredible. Our life was basically just hanging around as we were doing in Paris, training, going to the beach, training at the beach, for instance. We had bring our deep bar, our parallels. We had basically everything to train. And I remember I could make really substantial progress on front lever. I was about like at the hold to press variations. I was able to do maybe 2 presses, something like so. And so it's pretty decent on the planche side. However, I could mention that during the month of May, I could unlock a kind of bike straddle unhold, but still, after doing a month of strengthening. But after this, I just stagnated again and again because my strategy was kind of weak. On his side, Ippo decided to listen to some advices from a guy named Manny Bars. It was a really scientific measure kind of approach. and he was making substantial progress as I was in Frontiver. The reason why I wasn't doing as he was is that I had a certain ego. I had built myself on the Frontiver, and I was thinking that it could be about the same with Planche. I was convinced that I was a self-made. This was my way. I couldn't just progress thanks to others' advice this way, or it was basically ego. I think that's about this summer, these vacations more precisely, that we really developed a deeper, even deeper connection with Hippo, and that it was obvious, like we were meant to be together. Even though we had certain differences. For instance, I was kind of in my phase of I don't want girlfriend, I just want to focus, and meanwhile Hippolyte was getting his girlfriend. It wasn't his first one, but it was the one he was really in love with, a blondie as he was, and she was really nice. We'll call her Laura. And so that's how, by the end of summer, just approaching, we could have a kind of little close group of friends composed by Hippo, me, her girlfriend, and her girlfriend's best friend. We'll call her Georgia. And that was my kind of main socialized base, let's say, on kind of the love side of thing. As mentioned, I wasn't really interested in getting a girlfriend, but I had this intuition of willing to take care of my appearance. I decided at the end of summer to go for a meat part. And that's also the time I began to self-trim my hair. It's really in continuity with this I'm a self-made. I kind of self-customize myself. I decide for myself, and I'm out of like rules and normal path and all this stuff. I think this is a kind of first hint of this pattern occurring. And so the return to school is coming, and guess what? Our close friend group is in the very same class. That's amazing. We can socialize even more. I remember this class was a class in which I was getting really confident, even though I was kind of scared of the image people could have toward me. For a year, I was the guy with a girl that couldn't just kiss her. I don't know if people had this outlook on me, but I had this thought that people had this thought around me. So I was creating the hardship on my own. And so the plan for me was kind of clear. A street workout, my best friend, my friends on the side, and that's it. That's how I want to live my life. But one day, a girl just arrived, and she took everything. It was one day she just opened me on DM on Instagram, and she was bluntly direct. Hi, you are my type. You are dark hair, mid part, you have some freckles. Let's just hang around and see how it goes. And I told you I was kind of locked in my mind, but when I think about it, maybe it was more of a way to secure myself, because really quickly I was tempted by this proposition. We hung around, and her personality, this girl, she was shining, bustling in energy. We would do some crazy stuff like going in abandoned places with weird people sometimes. And she wasn't really scared. She was maybe innocent, maybe too much, maybe not. I was too. She could so easily raise smiles on my face, and it felt like complete day and night with the relationship I had with Elisa. Let's call her Maya. She had deep brown eyes. Her hair also were kind of brown. She was kind of just simple, but there was something, a charm. Her looks, her little eyes, they were shining by sometimes. It was like magical to some extent. And that's how really quickly she just conquered me. To be honest, the dynamic between us wasn't that way. I was kind of the trying to put a certain distance, but she would just reduce it within a fraction of seconds. She wasn't scared and she got what she wanted. We really quickly just began to date. And that's how I had one more thing to deal with. And strangely, it's changed a lot of things in my life. I had way more time dedicated to her. I remember we would call for hours literally before going to bed. We would even do calls of being at bed and maybe until we just fall asleep. We would have call while I was working out, and she was really supportive with that. So everything seemed to be going on plan. I remember this is a year I began to sneak out of home. I'd not necessarily recommend you to do so, but as mentioned, my mom wanted me to be at home at 6 p.m. And after this, it's not possible. The only situation I could be outside after this hour, it's in case I sleep at Ipo's house, for instance. But if I wanted to see my girlfriend, for instance, after 6 p.m., it wasn't possible. And so I was sneaking out by going through the window. I was at the first floor in like a building, apartment building. I was in an apartment at the first floor and I would just go out through the window, climbing some, I don't know how we call this, but you get the point. And I would sneak out to either go to see my girlfriend, go to hang out with friends, or even by sometimes go to a street workout park. I remember of a night, it was so late. I don't know why I had this idea. I wanted to work on my freestyle. It was in the winter. I've done 40 minutes or 30 minutes of scooter, like just going from my home to the park. So the return was also about 30 minutes. And I think all this was kind of encouraged by this relationship I had with Maya. I almost forgot it. Because we kind of had this let's face the world interdiction together. We would brave this, and it was giving me a certain confidence and strength. And more than this, I haven't mentioned the physical side of thing in the relationship because it has its own kind of importance. As you may know, with Elisa, the whole 1 year of relation was without this kind of stuff. With Maya, it was accelerating really quickly. We kind of not necessarily burned the step, but we went really fast. Maybe it was motivated by my intrinsic fear of just failing the same way I did with Elisa. And so kissing with a bit more intensity went pretty fast. We wouldn't go further, but this urge kind of developed within me. When, for instance, we would kiss for a whole night, literally a whole night, until like dawn, until like the sun would raise. I had the hardest blue balls of my life. I was in pain. And it's quickly after this that I realized how fast we would go. And there is also this situation where she told me she loves me and I couldn't answer. I had developed a really strong sense of importance with this, saying to someone that you love him. Maybe too much, because even today it's not something I can do. I have this weird relation with the action of saying that you love someone. And when this happened, something really triggered within me. I was all in a mess in terms of emotions. everything was escalating really quickly. I was moving a step forward before knowing whether I really wanted it or not. For the kissing, for instance, this was what unlocked me. I was like, maybe you're scared, but just forget this and go for it. I had this idea of moving further, you know, in the kind of sexual scale. And so I was all in a mess. Everything was going way too fast. And she was kind of challenging at me. Are we on the same basis? And I was like explaining her. I kind of overused it with my previous girlfriend. I really feel kind of traumatized to employ it so quickly, maybe. And I kind of fell under the pressure. I said it one day. And when I done it, I realized immediately I I did not love her as she was, or as she was thinking maybe. And quickly after this I thought even more. And a couple of days after I decided to end this relationship, I developed a really high guilt for this situation because I participated in this accelerating sort of thing. I had hurt her pretty hardly. She was, non-surprisingly, that kind of outgoing person with a lot of personal psyche deep wounds, like in the personal side of thing, that is just hiding the whole thing with performance, the outgoing personality, etc. She had told me all this, and I knew it, and I decided, however, to still break her heart this way. I had used some dumb pretext like mixing our relationship with my sport and study is not possible, and she would even kind of beg me to reconsider it. Like it was possible, we just had to see each other less, and she was right. It wasn't the real reason. The reason was that I just didn't love her as she was. And that's how, with a kind of bitter taste, I moved on from this relationship within December or November, something like so. But to this moment, I think what we can see as the positive side of things is that I, I unlocked some doors, like the kissing doors and mental barriers I could have with this. And also this bravery kind of personality I had acquired with her. I decided during our relationship to do my first street workout post. We were with Hippo completely matrixed by the outsiders. You may not know them, but it's basically Valentine outsiders. Dai Long, he was an outsiders. Leven and Nat and Bosesh also. Basically the best French athletes. The oldest one were basically all outsiders. And this group had the king aura, like the one reigning on the world in terms of strength, calisthenics in street workout. We were completely fan of them, and mostly on Daylong. Daylong was posting some hard wave edits with more than the music and the performances. There was effects here and there, and it was like so stimulating and unique. And this is something I wanted to reproduce. It had been a year and 9 months since I was in street workout, and I wanted to post my performances. I remember being in my room with my tripod, my phone, and my bar. I was preparing to do my hardest combos. It was like front lever, mixed grip, supination, front lever. It was just doing some variations of front lever. One time I could do like a pull-up with a lot of keeping. I could do also a forearm, a bad form front lever that wasn't holding. I had a lot of hardship with just the touch front lever. I wasn't able to hold tuck advance front lever, so that you can understand how bad I was at this specific variation. And I remember of spending hours and hours, maybe the whole weekend and a bit more, on just editing a 30-second clip. Like, you have to learn to use the software, you have to learn what kind of transition you have to do, how to do it. And yeah, it took me so much, but in the end, I was so glad I had experienced something that in the future would continue. Because quickly after this, Hippo decided to also launch in terms of performances, display to the world kind of thing. And this time it was even more serious than I was, because he on his side wasn't joking with training. I wasn't, but he decided to listen to people's advices. And during the whole year, he was helped by first many bars that I mentioned, but also a guy named Valentin, Outsiders. You may know him, obviously. The world's strongest plancher at the time, by certain circumstances I wouldn't explain, kind of helped him directly by offering his way of doing like programmation and all this stuff. And also a third guy that you wouldn't know, but he gave him some kind of programmation also for front lever this time. And so Hippo, after a year and 11 months of street workouts, 1 or 2 months just after my only front lever post, was preparing. We were in his room and we were using 2 phones in order to get 2 point of view of the very same combo in order to make some crazy transitions, because I was the one that would do the edit. It was my mission. I told you, I loved this. I loved the whole process of recording, editing, all this. And it was so freaking stimulated. He was preparing a lot. Like, he would put music. He was so focused in his combos. And he would take maybe 10 minutes of rest in order to launch again a performance. And I haven't talked explicitly of the performances, but I could say that he was at the straddle planche in May. During this session, he launched hold in full planche, and then he was able to press it. Beside this, he was also able to do a push-up with hold after this, and also do some wide planches. And I told you he was coached by someone in front lever. He wasn't really great in front lever, like the basic front lever, but, and that's maybe really surprising, he had the touch front lever, the freaking touch front lever. He had 3 seconds of these and a pull-up after this. He was kind of out of my zone. I was just a clown with my front lever, my variations, like, hey, look at it's the circus, look at my supination, mixed grip front lever. He was so freaking strong. He had listened to people that had more experience, and he trained pretty hardly. And even though our levels were completely different, this feeling of jealousy I may had like a couple months before kind of vanishes. For the first time, I was so invested in someone else's success. I was living with him, his performances. All my thoughts were directed toward making the best plan, the best transition between the 2 plans extra, because I would edit the whole thing afterward. I remember of how I put it so much heart trying to reproduce some effect that Tai Long was using in his edit. And the good thing is for him that my first edit that was kind of trash kind of served this second edit I did just couple weeks after, because I had more experience. I had the experience of my failure, and also the experience of the setback you have from your own work, you know. And even today, if I look at it, it was my second edit, the second edit ever of my life. It was freaking great. I wouldn't be ashamed to show it to you. And so when he posted it, I and we had a lot of expectations of will he blow up on the Instagram, because we didn't really forgot this kind of dream of like being famous thanks to our level in calisthenics. He had identified all the French athletes, and I remember Ilias commented something like, "Oh, stylé," or something like so. And so the new year is coming. We are in 2021, and I have a new programmation idea. I want to be freaking complete. I was seeing a dude on the internet sharing his progression. His name was Adrian underscore street workout. He was a French dude. He had begun about the same period as us, but he was pretty strong. But because he was like, he had a sport background and all this stuff, we actually didn't begin at the very same starting point and all this stuff. And he was sharing his programations and how complete he was. He had the touch, he had the planche, he was able to do push-up press, touch, pull-ups. He was on the road on Maltese, and more than this, he was also doing freestyle. So he was kind of pretty strong in this example for me. More than example, I have to admit, I was seeing him as a rival. Even though he would destroy me on every field, I was like, we began at around the same period. I'm younger than him, so I have the potential to one day beat him. And this is something that never disappeared for a really, really long time. I'll come back on this afterward, but yeah, I was motivated by this guy. I was watching back and forth a lot of his vlogs because he was sharing his programmation, his feelings, how things were moving forward. And that's how I decided to engage in a sort of programmation with about every skill. Literally, I was like, Monday I work impossible dips and Efesto. Tuesday I work on touch and planche. Wednesday I work on Victorian and maybe wide or Maltese with a bunch of elastic and straddle Maltese with elastic. It doesn't make any sense. And basically that was my plan. I was like, I want any skill because I was also convinced I could kind of get back to the level of Ipe in order to balance things out. And the spoiler, I don't have to create much suspense. It didn't work. Obviously, really few things worked. I say few things because I had one little success indeed. My one arm front lever was coming. A one arm front lever. I was doing some tuck. At first it was kind of half tuck. It wasn't tuck advanced. It was kind of a weird tuck because like a real one arm front tuck is really hard. I was putting my arm between my legs. It was kind of weird, but I could progress. And this is one thing that kind of stand out from the whole thing. I guess it's the one thing I was working on correctly. Meanwhile, other stuff would just be useless, you know. And that's how, by the end maybe of a month or two, I decided to, okay, look at things in an honest way. You do not progress. You're just confusing your body. Nothing makes sense. But there is this one thing, like one arm front lever is working, so maybe give it a bit more room for this. And that's how I decided to go back on a way more realistic programmation with touch front lever, pull-ups and one arm front, and on the side, in the push side, I would only go for planche, like presses, push-ups, and planche, straddle planche. And that's how my level was kind at this stage. I was on the straddle, cleaning my straddle. I had about 2 seconds of way cleaner straddle. You know, my ass was still kind of piked, but I wasn't in real pike straddle. I had some solid 2 seconds. My touch, however, was still pretty hard. I was still at this tuck advanced stage, and my ego was telling me to go for some straddle touch, which is the worst variation ever. And so I was stuck to this stage. On pull up, I was maybe doing some full pull up, but really bad form. And so maybe I should go for one leg, but I had way too much ego and so few knowledge and so few will also to listen to people that would help me. And the last thing I haven't mentioned, because this is weirdly the only thing that works well, is one arm front. I was able to really progress on this. I was able to do my first real tuck advanced front lever, one arm front lever, and I also began to weight it. I would put weight on my ankles and do one arm tuck advanced front lever, which was not something to love about it. It was genuinely interesting as performances. And it's in the very same situation that time passed until the coming of summer. And actually during spring, so just before summer, we would go out with Ipe in order to train in Street Workout Park again. But this year, there was a new park that was way closer to our home. It was way bigger. And so, incredible, right? This is where we met new people, new street workout people. There was a dude that was named Thomas. We would call him Toto. He was 1 meter 80 or maybe a bit more. He was so huge and he was able to hold a straddle. We had about the same level, so there was a kind of little rivalry I got back that I lost with Hippo. And he was able to do 360 and a bit more like little stuff like turnaround, some little stuff, you know. There was also a little guy that was 3 to 2 years younger than us, and it was the first time I was seeing a real street workout athlete, let's say, that was younger than me. His name was Lorenzo, and he was so strong in freestyle. He was able to do like 360, 540, maybe, I don't really know, maybe shrimp flip. I don't know. He was really, really impressive. And so that's how we were so motivated to just go out. And this time we had a real reason to go out. And it's about the same period that we saw on the Instagram. A competition, a friendly competition took place in Paris, at the other side of Paris. So we wouldn't go. And the level was incredible. It was full of young guys, and this time it was only static. It wasn't really street workout, it was more calisthenics strength. But at this time, people weren't doing the differentiation. We were freaking hype. And what if we could assist to these? So we kind of get in touch with people organizing this. And there is Adrian Street Workout, this guy I was kind of admiring a couple months before. He was a kind of organizing this stuff, not alone, just you could easily get in touch with him and he could easily tell you things. And I asked him and he was like, hey, next competition is in La Villette. La Villette is a park that was just near our home. It was the nearest park for us. It was the perfect occasion. We were freaking hyped. And we quickly realized it wasn't closed or anything. We just had to talk to them and they would add us in the group and we could maybe participate to a competition. This time, the friendly competition would split between push and pull. And so Hippo naturally decided to go for the push and I decided to go for the pull. There was really few people in the pull category. There was actually just Adrian and a guy named Luca. However, on the push side, there was a ton of guys. They were maybe 12 or something like so. But Hippo and I had our challenge. Hippo was kind of locked in. He was like, I want to do this combo, this. And I was also like thinking all around what I would do, and also in hope to kind of impress Adrian, even maybe beat him. I had this hope. You know why? Because my one arm front lever, I was able to hold it in full. Couple months after begin the work, I was able to go from my clown kind of variation of front lever to pretty decent form one arm front lever. And so the day was approaching. We were preparing so hard with Hippo. It was just a friendly competition that meant nothing for anyone except us, maybe. And so we arrived at the park. We had two monsters. It was our main source of energy. We both hadn't slept that much due to, you think over and over what you're going to do. Like, will I succeed or not? And actually, there wasn't much doubt. It was much more dream and excitement. And so we arrive and we see so many street workout calisthenics people. It was the first time that I personally was seeing so many street workout athletes at the very same place. A bunch of guys with parallettes, a bunch of guys doing stretching, or some dude doing their straddle planche to warm up. I was like, wow, dang, that's it. I was kind of intimidated. I was like, oh. And I was also trying to, as I would do in regular street workout park, this kind of flex when you arrive. I was kind of keeping this time. You do not flex pull-ups in front of these guys. So we kind of stayed in reserve. We warmed up extra, and the time of the competition came. Because there was 12 athletes in the push category, there would have a pool of the 12 athletes just doing a run in order to then classify them and to then do some little friendly battle, after which we could have a better statement of, top 1, 2, 3 extra. And so it was time for the push athlete to pass. And these dudes were so strong. They all had at least straddle variations and or full. And so Hippo's time was coming. He was so prepared, so focused, and I was living this with him. He was getting close to the bars. He could choose his own music. And he decided to launch full planche, push up, press, and then he tries to hold. And people around are screaming at him. They are shouting, hold, 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 hold. And when he had no energy anymore, he does like a V-sit because he was really flexible. And then he goes for like a full press, and it's so freaking hard. At the middle of the press, he's like pushing so hard, and people around are screaming even harder, and it provides him energy. And he continues this way. He's like, I don't have any energy anymore. People are like, do a hold, do something, continue. And he continued. He was giving his whole. And I was kind of amazed. I in shock. It was the first time I was living this kind of experience. I wasn't that kind of person shouting at someone else this way. But I understood how powerful it was. And so yeah, Hippolyte's run was done. He was so freaking proud, and I was also. A lot of other athletes just passed, and we discovered a guy that was just a year older than us. He was doing a freaking beautiful Maltese. It was the first time I saw a Maltese, and my eyes were blessed by this. We were calling this airplane. We were like, it's not Maltese, it's airplane. And it was even beautifuler than Dailong, to say. This guy was 15, 16 maybe, to the least. We were so like, what the hell? What the hell is going on here? His name was Noah. I think you will remember it. And quickly after this, it was my turn. If I remember well, Adrian was the first that passed on the front lever run. This time there wasn't pool and all this stuff. It was just people around voting for first, second, and third, as we only were three. And so Adrian goes on the bar. It was a kind of medium, like height bar. It wasn't a high bar, it wasn't a low bar, but kind of medium. And so he goes on it, phew, touch. It was so clean, so beautiful. I was kind of like, oh, damn, what will I do against that? I cannot touch my. I have to recall on this. My maximum touch variation is tuck advanced. And then he goes for pull-ups, some rainbow front lever, some presses. He can pull up again, and then he pull over on the bar and he does a Victorian forearm hold, and then he pull ups again, something like so, and then he goes in the end with a wide front lever, and I'm like, damn, he's strong. And it's on my turn. I had envisioned something, a combo I had never done before. I had thought about it so much. I was convinced I could do it. So I grabbed the bar, and I'm not even in front lever that I just pull so hard in order to do a pull-up. I felt so light. It was so like I was so full of adrenaline. I pull, and then I go for one arm front lever. It wasn't that clean, but I was able to hold it. Then I go for the second front lever because I was working on it on both arms. And then I hold a bit of the front lever. I'm like, what the fuck? What's happening? I have so much energy. And then I pull over. I do a kind of forearm Victorian as Adrian did. And I'm able to somehow hold it, not too much. It's really hard. And then I go for front lever. Then maybe a variation of front lever because that was my circus specialty. And then it's gone, and people around are like, oh, dang, oh, great. And I remember of how proud of me I was. In the end, people voted that Adrian beated me. He obviously did. It was way cleaner, much variety. Nothing to say. But this time I was so proud of me, and I had experienced what my body was capable of, how far I could push myself with this kind of preparation and environment. A lot of limits were pushed completely so far. It's also about the same day that in the very same park, in the very same place, there was a guy named Youssef Mo. You may not know him, but he is basically an international freestyle athlete. And I didn't know him at the time. I was like, oh, he's strong and yeah. And there is something I had not talked about, but during this couple weeks of training at the park of La Villette, that was, brand new extra, and meeting Lorenzo and Thomas that were strong in freestyle, I somehow unlocked the 360, which is insane. And the odds are that I also unlocked the ease of 360. I wasn't like, I unlocked it and I have doubt. I was getting really solid on it. I was able to do 4 360 in a row. Just like, you lunge 360, you do a second balance, a kick with your legs, you do 360. And I was able to do this like 4 times. So I had this on the side in mind, and I go to this Youssef Moreau, and I'm like, hey, bro, how do you do like a 360 tornado? This specific variation is you do a 360, and while you are in the air, you are grabbing the bar in a mixed grip, in an X grip, in order to then being able to again do a 360, which is really way harder than doing 360 in a row with the exact same motion extra. And he gives me like a tips like I don't remember. It was, I wouldn't say it was dumb, but it was kind of obvious, just a visualization kind of tips, like you want to grab maybe first with this hand or something like so. And I go to the bar, I do my 360, I apply this intent he just told me a moment before, I grab it. For the first time, I succeed to it. And then I do again a 360 with a mixed grip, which was basically my first time doing this, and I grab it again. I had unlocked a new skill that was way, way harder. Just like this, in the very same day, with all this competition kind of event and stakes, I was so freaking confused and amazed by what was happening. I remember of how I felt while going at bed at night. It was like, damn, I lived all this. Couple days after this, I came back to the park, and the extremely funny part of the story is that I lost it all. The 360 tornado, the ease at 360 in itself, I wasn't able to do it. It just left. The reason I lost it was that I kind of failed and created a certain little fear, and I was trying to not let it spiral by succeeding again, but I just did not. And I think this is how the failure just continued to occur, and this is how I naturally slowed down on freestyle. And I had also excuses because I was going to vacations, and this is how this short freestyle experiment just was an intense peak that just dragged down to nothing. And when talking about vacation, I had some vacations with my mom maybe, and I obviously bring my bars, like my huge bar that I had for my birthday, 1 meter large, and you cannot reduce it. It's easily 60 centimeters in height, and the foot on the bar of the bar also are wide. It's not a typical deep bar. I could bring this in vacation. I was freaking annoying with my mother for this. And so that's how I could maintain and work on my skills, and yeah, just continue my road toward the full planche this time, because I was grinding even more each time, just a bit, like doing some pyramid full planche, some kind of straddle planche press that weren't clean. And the reason I could progress is that for the first or second time I changed my mind. And what if I was listening to others' advices? I decided to go for this Valentine Outsiders approach of you do your maximal variation, you do a L sit, you do the second maximal variation, you do a L sit, you do your third variation, extra. I decided to go for this approach, and I saw certain results. So all this happens during the middle of the summer, and the end of the summer was even better, because I had the chance to go to Corsica, which is basically a little island in the very southeast part of France, with Ipo. Her mother really more than kindly invited me, and it was incredible. Like, it was even better than last year. Vacation with my best friend, in which our main goal in life was doing calisthenics. I remember of how intense I was going and how I was pushing doors, because during these vacations I pushed a huge one. I remember of a music that was posted by Christophe. You may know Christophe. In summer 2020, he posted a video, an edit video with a music that was so intense. It was trap, and the first pass was kind of bustling. It was providing me so much energy, and it's like the music I overused during the whole summer in order to get my best combos and push doors extra. And I remember being stuck to this stage of pyramid to second of full planche. And one day it was getting so hot in Corsica. I was also a bit tired, I decided to get myself out of myself. I was like, I will push no matter what. And so I go for the bars and I try a full press. It was pyramid. It was awful to see. But I I was able to go to the kind of full pyramid position to the handstand. And this unlocked something in my head. I was like, okay, I'm able to do certain stuff that I wasn't really conscious about. I go also for the push-up, full push-up on the very next day. My foot are touching the floor, but I do not freaking care. I just go for it. I just push to the hardest. And then after this, I go for a kick or full planche. It's kind of dumb to some extent. It doesn't make much sense, but the sense it created is what I had in my head now, not what my body would learn from it. It was about what I was thinking, what my body was able to do now. I don't know if you get the difference. In the meantime, everything cannot go in the perfect way, you know. Hippo had injured himself. After this long prime, he injured in elbows, wrists, all this stuff. He was fighting to maintain the level. So it was kind of the steady, kind of half steady, half stagnating kind of progress. He fought really hard and could maintain, and the return to school was coming, and it's around this period, maybe a couple weeks after this, he decided to stop street workout for maybe 6 months, I don't know, just in order to let his body rest from the whole thing. He had tried for 2 months maybe to heal from the injury, but he couldn't. It was creating a lot of frustrations, which I can understand, and he decided to just stop. To this moment, I was scared, I have to admit. What about our friendship? Who would it hold? Because this is how we met. This is why we began to be friends. And without this, would it be normal so that I go to his home and we're not doing street workout? This was all the kind of fear I had within. But the truth is that it wasn't about this anymore. We had this friend group with his girlfriend, Laura, and her best friend, Georgia. And it wasn't about street workout. It was about just friendship and spending good time together. That's how our link tied even deeper to some extent, because it wasn't limited to street workout anymore. We were invested in each other's life, and yeah, the relationship just deepens this way. I remember getting even closer also to Laura and Georgia. Georgia was really funny. She would get interested in our street workout side of thing. She was able to appreciate hard wave songs to go to sleep. What the hell? But anyways, we are in November 2021. I'm kind of alone in this street workout side of thing, but I'm not scared, I'm not in fear or in pain, because in fact, I'm eager to progress even more. I could feel how it felt to be in the prime and to feel how you progress and how you can push doors and move forward. On the love side of thing, I was kind of wired. I had broke up with Maya, which was a wonderful girl. For the sake of this, I was feeling a lot of guilt. I had no interest in to look out for something else. So my goal was clear, my direction also. And this is where we will end this part of the story. I hope that you enjoyed and had some value through the whole thing. I sincerely hope that you will spend a great day, that you spend your time mindfully, and in hope to see you soon. Bye.